If you're watching this video, then you're probably like I was a few weeks ago. You have a decent amount of Corrupted Gauntlet experience, you saw the Grandmaster Speedrun time, and you decided to give it a go, but you don't have a ton of experience speedrunning it. So what I want to do in this video is give some general information for really optimizing your Corrupted Gauntlet runs, and then go through an example prep. First things first, if you're not already comfortable completing Corrupted Gauntlet, much like anyone who spent a night with me, you're going to have a bad time. So before attempting the speedrun version of this activity, I highly suggest getting comfortable with prep and with killing Hunllef while taking next to no avoidable damage. I actually highly suggest a video made by Solo John that I'll link in the top right that goes over a lot of good general items that will help make your Corrupted Gauntlets more efficient and consistent. But if you're not a nerd, you're not here for efficiency, you're here for the tips on the mind-numbing experience that is going kind of fast in Corrupted Gauntlet, and for that I have a few additional notes and tips. So starting off, my recommendations for stats is having 95 plus in your combat stats, having access to Lunars in order to cast Vengeance, and access to the prayers Rigor and Augury. These aren't all required, but the lower your stats and the fewer things you have, the more dependent you are going to be on RNG. With decent stats, this achievement isn't super RNG dependent and overall requires just slightly more than average RNG. And as far as prep goes, with enough practice, you'll be able to prep well over half your runs, leaving most of your runs just dependent on your Hunllef fight. Next, let's talk about the supplies that you'll need to prep. Generally, you'll want to make full tier 1 armor, 1 tier 3 weapon, 1 tier 1 weapon, 2 potions, and 12 fish, and overall this will require 260 shards. We'll talk about this more when we go through the example run. In terms of why we're bringing 12 paddlefish specifically, the amount of fish that I've chosen is based on the average amount of damage you'll take based on an average Hunllef. All things considered, your goal is to aim for a 3-minute 20-second Hunllef, and you can see on screen where I'm coming up with that, which it gives you about 3 minutes and 10 seconds for your prep phase. The more comfortable you get with prep, the more time you'll have for Hunllef, just increasing your chances of getting this time. Next, the biggest thing you can do to save time is to reduce downtime. If you ever find yourself backtracking to a room you've already been to, or you find yourself standing still while killing an enemy, you better have a really good reason you're doing that, or you're probably just doing something wrong and wasting time. With the items that we're making in the path that you'll see in a minute, you'll always have enough inventory space for whatever you need, so you'll really never have a reason to go back to a room you've already been to. Do what you need to in that room when you open it, but realistically, your pathing should always take you to new rooms to see as many new things as possible. Now, I know this sounds obvious, but it's so incredibly important to be actively aware of this, because sometimes it's just so easy to click to a demi-boss room, running through a room you've already opened, wasting maybe 4 seconds, when you still need, let's say, an ore deposit, which you would have found if you had opened rooms on your way to that demi-boss room, rooms that you would have had to open anyway. So always efficiently pathing so you're seeing as much as possible and having as little downtime is incredibly important. And finally, before we go through an example run, let's go over Hunllef. Generally, there isn't much to say about it other than you need to be able to kill it while taking no avoidable damage. The reason for this is every extra point of damage you take is just another paddlefish that you'll need to eat, which both wastes a few ticks to eat and also it wastes your supplies, which you don't really have extra of. You're bringing in just enough food to survive an average Hunllef, so if you get trampled and take a 38, you're probably not going to have enough supplies to cover that mistake, so you need to be able to consistently kill Hunllef while taking no avoidable damage. In addition to this, I'm going to say it's borderline required to be comfortable doing 5-to-1 using your fists as the melee switch. For those of you who don't know, 5-to-1 is attacking Hunllef 5 times with your strongest weapon and then switching to a weaker weapon on the 6th attack in order to manipulate Hunllef's prayer. Now, admittedly, you don't need to do 5-to-1 to get the 6-minute 30-second time, but if you don't, you're relying way too much on a very ideal layout in order to prep properly. Because if you're not 5-to-1ing, you really need 2 tier 3 weapons, which means you need to find the 2 correct demi-bosses in enough time. And generally, the time you save not doing 5-to-1 on the boss is not made up in the time it takes to find the 2 demis. You also need to kill an extra demi-boss, which takes a not inconsequential amount of time. So generally, I just highly suggest learning and being comfortable with 5-1 because it will not only make your runs faster on average, but also just generally more consistent, and you'll be able to prep more layouts. So to summarize these general tips, really just always know exactly what you need and when you need it. Don't stand still or backtrack ever, and just generally play well. These are simple things, but if you're following all of these, you'll find that honestly, this prep time is pretty achievable fairly consistently. And then, like I said, you're really just left to killing Hunllef cleanly, and you'll have the Grandmaster Achievement. Now, with that out of the way, let's go through an example prep and see how I put these things into action to get, I think, a 2-minute 50-second prep time. So starting off with the run, obviously cast Vengeance before you go into the Corrupted Gauntlet, then head in. The first thing you want to do is open the closest room to you and check Hunllef's Prayer. If Hunllef is praying ranged, you want to focus on getting a tier 3 staff. If Hunllef is praying mage, you want to focus on getting a tier 3 bow, and if he's praying melee, you can get either a staff or a bow, but a bow is slightly more DPS. That being said, the staff is very, very close, so don't feel bad if you do have to get a tier 3 staff. Moving on, you want to open the rooms in a U-shaped pattern like you normally would in a gauntlet, but you want to make sure you're opening the demi-boss rooms. You're not going into them, you're just opening them so you know what you have available and you can see as many rooms as possible. Now, the main thing you're looking for is obviously supplies, so gather supplies as you see them, but the biggest thing you're looking for is a weapon frame and 40 shards. So as soon as you see a room with 3 tier 1 enemies or 2 tier 2 enemies, focus on killing them while doing the rest of the activities in the room. Remember, you can pick a resource or mine a resource, and as soon as that XP drop goes, you can attack the enemy on the next tick. Some nerdy shit about combat resetting skilling cycles, so you're able to gather resources and kill enemies without having any time lost. So as soon as you get this weapon frame, you want to head directly back to the starting area. The idea is that this is the only time we go back to the starting room other than when we're heading into the Hunllef fight. So the items we want to craft when we get back to this room is a tier 1 staff and 2 vials. The vials are important because they're actually necessary to have enough inventory space so we don't have to go back to the starting room. So once those items are crafted, continue opening rooms, but in the opposite direction. That way you don't waste time running through rooms that you've already opened. Honestly, one of the biggest things you want to pay attention to in the preparation phase is make sure you don't have any downtime. So running through a room that's already open is not useful, especially if there's no resources in there that you'd need. So after you craft your weapon and your vials, your main focus now is going to be killing the correct demi-boss. So at this point, you might have opened some of the demi-boss rooms already, and if you haven't, make your way down to that row of rooms where the demi-bosses will spawn and start opening them up. Now, if you don't find the demi-boss you're looking for, you can restart the run. Once you're more experienced and you feel comfortable with the timing, you do have time to go over to one of the side demi-boss rooms to look for the correct demi-boss, but if you're just getting started, feel free to just reset. You're only about maybe 1 to 2 minutes into a run. There's not too much time loss. So once you find the correct demi, you want to proc your Vengeance on this demi-boss. The reason we're proccing it on the demi-boss is, first off, the tier 1 staff isn't great DPS. Another reason is if the demi-boss hits a 40, then we can heal up while we're finishing our preparation without losing any time. If we proc Vengeance on Hunllef, we take 40 damage, and now we have to spend time eating during the Hunllef fight, and there's a significant time loss there. So proccing it on the demi-boss is almost always a better time save. That being said, once the demi-boss is dead, finish gathering your resources. Now, one thing that's very important is you need to make sure you're dropping your tools as soon as you're done using them. This includes dropping your pestle and mortar once your potions are finished. This will allow you to have just enough inventory space to fit everything that you need without having to return to the starting area or dropping anything. The supplies that we're making is full tier 1 armor, 1 tier 3 weapon, 1 tier 1 weapon, 2 potions, and 12 fish. This means you need to make sure that you have 200 shards in your inventory before going back to the starting area, and that's assuming you've already made your potions while gathering resources. If you haven't made your potions, you'll need 220 shards. So once you have all your resources gathered and you have the 220 shards, head back to the starting area, cook your food, craft your items, and then head into the Hunllef fight. Now remember to eat food while you're walking up to the Hunllef doors so you start as high health as possible without overhealing, and drink your prayer potions so you're as high prayer as possible as well. The goal time for the preparation phase is under 3 minutes and 10 seconds. This gives you 3 minutes and 20 seconds for Hunllef, which is a decent amount of time. Generally an average Hunllef time if you make very few mistakes and you have decent enough hits. Now towards the beginning of the video, I mentioned that I can probably prep around 70% of the runs that I do in enough time, but it did take me a while to get to that point. So don't feel bad if your first few preps are slow. They're 30 seconds over, 45 seconds over. Don't feel bad, just focus on looking at where you could save time. Are there any times that that you were standing still auto-attacking an enemy? Well, next time move while attacking or gather resources while attacking. Did you find yourself spending too much time running in rooms that were already open that didn't have good resources? Well, next time prepare properly for that and go a different direction so you're discovering new rooms or you're pathing towards the resources in a more efficient manner. The biggest thing I can tell you is just constantly focus on how you can save 1 to 2 seconds here or there, and eventually that all adds up. And once you're at the point where you can consistently prep in under 3 minutes and 10 seconds, it's just a matter of having a good Hunllef and you'll have that Grandmaster time. Now, I know a lot of these tips probably seemed fairly obvious, but it is important that you focus on these because there are so many areas where you miss. You know, missing 4 ticks on something might not sound like a lot, but if you miss 4 ticks a few different times, that could add up to 15 seconds of time saved just by playing a bit cleaner, and that's what I wanted to focus on with this video. So hopefully you enjoyed this video and it helped you speed up your gauntlets a little bit, but that is all I have for this video. Again, I am Joseph, this is Joseph's Place, and I will see you next time.